kind of stuff. Hey guys, it's Jesse here with Jarosz Knives and K-Bar. Today I'm going to be showing you how to sharpen up your knife using the kind of stuff you would find laying around out in the woods. We've got a few different rocks here and a piece of wood, and I'm primarily going to be working on the globetrotter. So these rocks have a few different shapes to them. This one here has a concave surface, which is going to be great for your larger knives if you want to put on a convex edge. I would do that with the choppa, hatchet, machetes, that kind of thing. I'm not going to be using it on my smaller knife, the globetrotter, because that's just not my preferred edge on a small knife like this. This one here is great. This is probably the best shape in my opinion to use for sharpening. It's a puck shape, and what the puck has to it is a large surface area, which allows you to remove more material quicker because you're contacting more of the edge, and it's just grabbing more material as you go. So I'm going to be using that one today. This one here is also pretty good. This one has a nice long flat surface. It would be good for sharpening larger knives. The only downfall with it is that it has these rounded corners, which don't allow you to reach into the plunges of your knives. And that wouldn't be a problem with this knife because you don't have a plunge that's obstructing the edge. But this one would be an issue because you wouldn't be able to quite reach into that choil at the plunge. So good stone, but not optimal. And these larger stones, these were all coarse grit. I couldn't find anything really fine in this size, so I had to go with these smaller stones for my fine grit. And that's going to be fine. It's just going to take a little bit more work to tune up that edge. This one here I like because it has a nice flat surface, not a lot of dings or cracks or anything in it, and it's going to work really well. This one would be okay. It has some flat surfaces on it, but all the flat surfaces have little cracks and divots and stuff that would possibly damage or make sharpening more difficult. So not what I'm going to be using. And depending on your environment, you might not have these kinds of stones available. I'm in Montana now. Back home in Nebraska, there's no way I would find a big river stone like this for a coarse grit. I did have some sandstone and stuff like that, which would be fine, but I don't think that's optimal because it's a little bit coarse in my opinion. These river stones are great. This kind of stuff I've seen a little bit of everywhere. You can find smaller stones like this just about anywhere if you do some digging. So just work with what you got, and that's what it's about out in the field sometimes. And then over here I got a piece of wood. What I did was I mixed up a solution of water and dirt, and I rubbed it into the wood. And what that does is it acts as an abrasive compound, just like you would put on your strop. A strop is a piece of leather with that abrasive on it, and it allows you to fine tune your edge and remove that micro burr. That's exactly what we're doing here with this piece of wood and that dirt. And you could also use a leather belt, probably denim stretched over this if you had it to spare. But when you're making a short day trip or something like that, you screw up your edge accidentally or whatever, you didn't bring your sharpening equipment, this is what you got to work with. It's not optimal, but you can definitely tune up your edge with it. So let's get into it. So like I said, I'm going to be sharpening up the globetrotter today, and typically I would add water or oil to these stones, but because it's cold outside and there's snow on the ground, if I did that out there, the stone would freeze up and it would make it impossible to sharpen. But for the sake of convenience, we're sharpening inside today, and I'm going to try to replicate the natural environment as best as I can, while still making this video easy to watch and easy to make for me. So why don't we get into it? So obviously, depending on which side of the knife you're sharpening, you're going to have to adjust your grip. For sharpening the pile side, I'm right-handed. I like to hold the knife like this because it keeps it stable as it can be. Obviously you're not going to be perfect because you don't have a fixture or anything, but it's as stable as possible, and it gives me a clear area to work on that stone. When moving to the mark side of the blade, I like to rest my knuckles on the ground or on the surface that I'm working on, and that gives me a nice stable blade. So I can sharpen like that. And you just have to experiment and see what works best for you. That's just kind of how it is. Everybody is different, and it might not work the same for everybody. So you just got to experiment and see what's best. When it comes to holding your stone at an angle, practice makes perfect. There's really no good advice I can give you other than practice, practice, practice. when you're using a natural stone like this, there's no way to guide it or set up your angles or anything like that. So you just got to know the feel of the knife and what you're doing. So just practice. Before you start doing stuff like this, learn how to sharpen on regular stones first. That's the way to go. Then when you're good enough, you can move to a stone like this. So let's get into sharpening. What I like to do with a puck shape like this is just rotate it around, making circular passes over the entire edge. This allows me to cover as much surface area as possible in a short time and really start getting after it. You want to be careful not to focus in one spot too long so you're not wearing in a low spot or wearing down the tip of your knife. Every once in a while, take a break, look at your edge, make sure you're covering it equally. So you can see this edge was polished at first, but because I'm using a coarse stone, that polish is being removed. And I mentioned it earlier, but depending on the shape of your stone, it's going to be hard to reach some places. Like this stone is curved on the edges, so it's pretty tricky to reach into those plunges. That might be something I have to save for my smaller stone, which has a little bit sharper corners. You want to keep track in your head, or maybe even count out loud to how many passes you're making or how long you're working on one side of an edge. That way you don't overwork one side and get an uneven edge. So I'm starting to get a little bit of a burr on the back side of my edge, kind of towards the belly. And then I have a little bit of work to do at the tip. So I need to focus my sharpening towards the tip of the knife to get that burr consistent along the entire edge. So I'm going to switch to the pile side of the knife and hold it in the grip I showed you earlier and start working on that. No matter what, your knife is going to be moving around when you're sharpening like this. The important thing is that it's staying level. It can move back and forth, but at least it's maintaining that same angle through the whole process. If the knife can move around like this, then you're going to have issues. So this grip here stabilizes the knife on this plane, but it can still move back and forth. So that's not too much of an issue. A lot of sharpening is just patience and attention. Just be aware of what's going on, how things feel, and know that it takes a little bit of time to accomplish what you're trying to get. So the small stone is going to be pretty much the same routine. I'm going to be working this edge in circular patterns. It's just going to take a little bit more work because I have less surface area, and it's going to take more to polish out those coarse scratches. And I also have to remember I have to work out this plunge too because I couldn't quite reach it with my larger stone. Coming along pretty nice. Still need to try to work out that plunge as best as I can. I do have a sharp little corner here in the back, and I'll see if I can work it out with that. Might have to change up my grip a little bit, but you do what you got to do to make it work. So that worked out pretty good. I only have about a 1/16 of an inch, if that, left to sharpen, and I just can't quite reach that with these stones. So you're making do with what you got, and if that's how it is, that's how it is. So moving on to the other side. All right, so I've got a nice consistent burr going along the back side of my edge here, and everything is nice and polished out as best as it can be with this type of a stone. What I want to do is make a couple quick passes on both sides to kind of knock down the burr as much as I can with this stone, and then we'll go ahead and move over to this piece of wood here. That should do it for the stones. So it's sharp as is now, but I can tell that there's definitely a burr there, and I want to make sure that's removed. And it also looks like that softer stone kind of deposited some of its grit, I guess, on the edge, and I want to get that off of there too, because that's going to obstruct the cutting ability of this edge. So what I'm going to do with this piece of wood is, before I use it as a strop, I'm going to take the side that isn't coated in our dirt abrasive mix that we made, and I'm going to run the edge across some bare wood a few times. And that's going to remove some of that burr. And you don't have to do it really hard, just nice and easy, trying to get rid of any of that big burr on there before we go to the strop. Once that's done, you're just going to use this like a regular old strop. Work on the edge, going away from your edge, and pulling it back, maintaining that angle, going from the plunge to the tip of your knife. So nice and easy. Wood isn't the best. I mean, it doesn't form to your edge like leather does. So do the best you can. And I've got a knot here, which made it difficult to plane this out. And I've got some rough patches, so I'm just going to focus on this about 6 inches here. After you've done that for a while, and you can spend a good 5 minutes doing this, because this isn't your optimal strop, so it's going to take a little bit more work. I'm going to make a couple more short passes here on each side, and we'll see what the edge looks like. Now, once you finish sharpening your knife, or even during the process of sharpening, it's important to know that using these kinds of natural stones might not necessarily produce the same quality of edge that you're used to getting at home off of your professional equipment or a nice set of stones. That being said, if you spend the time and look for good quality rocks, some that are varying degrees of grit, nice flat surface area, proper shape that allows you to reach most of the edge, you can produce just as sharp of an edge. But these rocks here are not optimal. These are just quick finds, something I found laying around, and I made a makeshift strop. You could split a nice large piece of wood and stretch some denim over it, maybe a bandana, load that with your makeshift abrasive compound using dirt. If you're familiar with Quonset dust at all, that's the kind of dust you want to look for. Really fine stuff that you can rub into the grain of the wood or your cloth. So keep that in mind. The quality of stones you're using and the quality of stuff you find is definitely going to affect the outcome of your sharpening process. All that being said, I was able to produce a functional edge on this knife using suboptimal materials. The most important thing about owning tools is being able to properly maintain and service them yourself. And when you're able to do that with what's available in your surroundings, you're all the more prepared. So you can see that the edge no longer has that mirror finish. It's as fine as I could go with what was available to me, and that's likely going to be the case with whatever you guys find as well. It's probably extremely unlikely to find something so refined that you'll be able to produce a mirror edge out in the field, but it's definitely possible, but probably unlikely. So this is the best I could do with these stones, and let's see if this knife shaves. Not quite as sharp as it could be, but still shaving sharp, so that counts for something. So, not bad for using a couple rocks and a piece of wood. So, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.